Hi, I'm Angela Peoples, Policy and Advocacy Manager at Campus Progress, and I'm here to answer a few questions that some people have submitted to us regarding the issue of voter ID laws and some of the voter suppression efforts that are happening across the country. It's true that a number of Americans do have a government issue ID, but the interesting thing about these laws and the challenge that we're facing is that they're not just saying that you have to have a government issue ID, they're asking for very specific forms of government ID. And so there are a number of cases where someone may have a government issue ID, but because these laws are new, they may not meet all of the requirements that are necessary to be able to cast a vote in the election. A good example is somebody who is an out-of-state student. Let's say that you're a student and you're from Michigan, your ID is from Michigan, you got your driver's license when you were in high school, but you want to go to school in Ohio, and your state ID is not, it's a Michigan ID, not an Ohio ID. Under some of the new laws, you would not be able to vote if your ID didn't have the same address as where the new state that you were living in. And for whatever reason, millions of Americans, studies have shown us that millions of Americans just don't have this form of ID. So regardless of the reason, whether it's because they don't need it in their day-to-day life, or they just don't have an ID, or maybe their ID is just expired. Regardless of the reason, we don't think it should be a barrier to prevent people from participating in their democracy. It's different in various states. Some states are offering these IDs for free, but they're not actually free. They come at a cost to the state and to the taxpayers in the state. And this is in the face of a lot of states who are saying there's no money for education, no money for health care, no money for transportation. They're cutting back their budgets, but then they're passing these laws that cost millions of dollars to produce, quote, free IDs. And then also there's a cost associated with producing some of the documentation that's necessary to get your ID. It costs money to reproduce your birth certificate or to get a new Social Security card. There's also a lot of situations where states are cutting hours for their DMVs. And so if you if you need to go get a new ID, a lot of times folks have to take off of work. There's a cost associated with that. Maybe you have to find childcare. Maybe there's a cost to get transportation to the DMV. And these DMVs have limited hours, between 9 to 5. That's often the work hours for a lot of folks. And so there are a lot of other costs associated with these voter ID laws, not just the cost of producing or getting a new ID. Unfortunately, we've seen that these new laws, a lot of the proponents of the laws say, well, we're passing them because we have to stop voter fraud. But the reality is that, one, there is no evidence of broad-based voter fraud, and two, if there was voter fraud, these laws would do nothing to combat the voter fraud or voter impersonation. In fact, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than to commit voter impersonation fraud. So the only effect that these laws will have is to limit access to voting and to disenfranchise low-income people, young people, people of color, even veterans and our elderly. I cannot say what encouraged one state legislator or another to institute or to try to pass a voter ID law, but what I can say is that the expressed intent of combating voter impersonation is not achieved. There's no voter impersonation fraud, and these bills will not do anything to combat voter impersonation fraud. Well, first of all, thank you so much for checking out our website. We're glad to have you. One thing I would say is to check out our site. There's a map. If you look at the map, Campus Progress, or look at the site campusprogress.org/voter ID, you'll see a map, and check out where your state falls. Has your state passed a new voter ID law? Have they passed another form of voter suppression? Are there any new legislation that you have to be ready for changes when it comes to be election time? So educate yourself, educate your friends and your family. If you do have to get a new ID, go get it. Go out, get the information that you need, and tell your friends and your family, and go out and vote. And then the next step I would also say is to check out our website and to stay up to date on all of the news for voter ID at campusprogress.org/voter ID.
Peace out.